The Void Protocol Chapter 6. The Vertical. The roar of the Golden Wolf wasn't just a sound, it was a physical displacement of air. It hit us like a shockwave, blowing the dust off the shipping containers and rattling the fillings in my teeth. "Move!" Rin screamed, grabbing my good shoulder and shoving me into the narrow gap between two stacks of crates. We scrambled into the shadows just as the beast charged. It didn't run like a dog. It moved with the terrifying, fluid momentum of a landslide. 4 tons of gold-plated armor and vat-grown muscle slammed into the train wreckage where we had been standing a second ago. Crunch. The twisted steel of the locomotive groaned and folded. The wolf didn't stop. It thrashed, its massive paws, tipped with diamond-edged claws meant for tearing through tank armor, shredding the metal floor. I huddled behind a crate marked "Fragile," synthetic organs, pressing my back against the cold steel. My chest heaved, every breath a jagged shard of pain in my fractured ribs. I looked at my new arm. The obsidian plating was pulsing with a faint, rhythmic blue light. It was humming. "Predator. Near." The arm whispered into my mind. It wasn't Vex's voice. It was a primitive, instinctive warning from the void tech itself. The arm wanted to fight. The hydraulic pistons in my forearm twitched, yearning to punch something. "Suppress it," I hissed to myself, gripping the iron wrist with my flesh hand. "Not yet." Rin was kneeling beside me, her rifle shouldered, peering around the corner of the crate. Her face was a mask of grime and blood, but her hands were steady. "It's blind," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the mechanical growl of the beast. "The Shepherd unit. It doesn't have optical sensors. It hunts by scent and sonar." "Sonar?" "That turret on its back," Rin pointed. "It's a wideband acoustic echolocation array. Pings the room. If we move, it hears us. If we breathe too loud, it hears us." As if to confirm her theory, the wolf stopped thrashing. It stood amidst the wreckage, its massive golden head lowering to the ground. The saw blades in its mouth spun down to a low, menacing idle. Whir-click, whir-click. On its back, the turret swiveled. A dish made of polished chrome rotated, aiming directly at the stack of crates where we were hiding. Bing. A sound emitted from the machine. It was a high-pitched chirp like a bat's cry, but amplified to a painful decibel. The sound wave washed over us. I felt it vibrate in my skull. It mapped the room, bouncing off the metal containers, painting a 3D image in the wolf's processor. The turret stopped rotating. It locked onto our position. The wolf snarled. The saw blade spun up to a screaming whine. "It found us," I said. "Run!" Rin yelled. We bolted. We sprinted down the narrow aisle between the towering stacks of containers. Behind us, the world exploded. Crash. The wolf didn't bother to go around the crates. It went through them. It smashed into the container we had been hiding behind, knocking the 10-ton metal box aside as if it were made of styrofoam. Containers toppled, crashing down in a domino effect of thunderous noise. We turned a corner, sliding on the slick concrete floor. "We need elevation," I shouted, spotting a maintenance ladder bolted to the side of a loading crane. "The floor is a kill zone." "Go." Rin covered me, firing a 3-round burst at the shape emerging from the dust cloud. The depleted uranium slugs sparked harmlessly off the wolf's sloped gold armor. It didn't even slow down. I jumped for the ladder, grabbing the rungs with my iron hand. I hauled myself up, the servos in my shoulder whining. I reached down with my flesh hand. "Rin." She leaped, grabbing my hand. I pulled her up just as the wolf's jaws snapped shut on the air where her boots had been. Snap. The sound of the saw blades grinding together was like a chainsaw hitting bone. We scrambled up the crane, reaching the operator's gantry 30 feet above the floor. We collapsed on the metal grating, gasping for air. Below us, the wolf circled the base of the crane. It reared up on its hind legs, raking its claws against the steel support beams. The entire structure shuddered. "It can't climb," Rin panted, reloading her rifle. "Its center of gravity is too low." "It doesn't need to climb," I said, looking down at the turret on its back. "It has the cannon." The wolf dropped back onto all fours. It planted its feet, digging its claws into the concrete to brace itself. The chrome dish on its back opened like a flower. Inside, a glowing red core began to charge. The air around the beast shimmered, distorting from the heat and the sonic pressure building up. Sonic blast. I realized. Cover your ears. I didn't cover my ears. I slammed my hands over the sides of my helmet. Rin clamped her hands over her headphones. Boom. It wasn't a sound. It was a hammer made of air. The sonic cannon fired. A visible ripple of distortion shot upward, slamming into the underside of the gantry. The metal grating beneath us buckled. The shockwave hit me like a physical blow to the stomach. My vision blurred violently. But the worst part wasn't the impact. It was the frequency. The sound drilled straight into my brain. It wasn't just noise, it was a psychoacoustic weapon. It was tuned to the resonant frequency of the human nervous system. My knees unlocked. I fell to the floor, retching. The world began to spin. Hallucinations flickered in my peripheral vision. I saw the gilded stalker standing over me. I saw the face of the hollow I had killed. I saw Ilara screaming silently in the blue water. "Get up!" Rin was screaming, but her voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. She was bleeding from the nose. The sonic blast had ruptured capillaries. The crane groaned. The structural beams were vibrating, resonating with the frequency. Rivets popped like bullets. The crane was going to collapse. "We have to jump," Rin yelled, grabbing my coat. "To the container stack." I looked across the gap. The top of a stack of shipping containers was 5 meters away. "I can't." I gagged, the nausea overwhelming me. "My balance." "Use the arm." Rin slapped my face hard. "Use the damn arm, admin." The slap cleared the fog for a split second. I looked at my obsidian arm. It wasn't shaking. The biological part of me was falling apart under the sonic assault, but the void tech was immune. It thrived on dissonance. I grabbed Rin around the waist with my iron arm. "Hold on," I gritted out. I ran 3 steps and jumped. I didn't jump with my legs. I used the hydraulic piston in the arm to punch the railing of the gantry as I leaped, using the recoil to launch us across the gap. We sailed through the air. Below us the crane collapsed. With a shriek of twisting metal, the massive steel structure folded in on itself, crashing down onto the spot where the wolf was standing. Dust billowed up, swallowing the monster. We landed hard on the corrugated roof of a container. I rolled, taking the impact on my iron shoulder, shielding Rin. We lay there for a moment, waiting for the ringing in our ears to stop. "Did we get it?" Rin whispered, wiping blood from her upper lip. I looked at the pile of twisted wreckage below. Silence. Then, a low rhythmic thrumming. Hum-wop, hum-wop. The debris pile shifted. A beam of gold light cut through the dust. The wolf emerged. It was damaged. The sonic turret on its back was smashed, hanging by wires. One of its golden armor plates was dented. But it was alive. And it was angry. It looked up at us. It let out a howl that didn't need a cannon to be terrifying. "It's not stopping," I said. "It's going to hunt us until one of us is dead. We need an exit." Rin scanned the warehouse. "This place is a dead end. It's just storage." "No," I said, my admin sense tingling. I closed my eyes, reaching out with the phantom port. The map in my head flickered to life. "There," I pointed to the far wall of the Foundation chamber. "Behind those tarps. There's a power signature. High voltage. Vertical alignment. An elevator? A freight lift. Designed to carry construction meches up to the spire during the building phase. It connects the Foundation to the lower maintenance levels." "Is it working?" "No," I said, feeling the cold silence of the grid. "But I can wake it up." We scrambled across the tops of the containers, jumping from stack to stack like rats in a maze. Below us, the wolf paced, shadowing our movement. It couldn't jump this high, and with its cannon broken, it couldn't shoot us down. But it was fast. It would beat us to the wall. We reached the last stack. The wall was 10 meters away. The massive freight lift doors were visible behind rotting plastic tarps. But there was a gap. An open floor space between the containers and the lift. And the wolf was waiting there. It stood directly in front of the elevator doors, looking up at us. It knew where we were going. It was learning. "Smart dog," Rin muttered. "How much ammo do you have left?" I asked. 2 magazines. "But the kinetic rounds won't penetrate that armor. I might as well be throwing rocks." "Don't shoot the armor," I said, looking at the beast. "Shoot the meat." "What meat?" "It's plated." "The mouth," I said. "The saw blades. It's the only opening. If you can jam the mechanism." "I need a clear shot. It has to open its mouth." "I'll make it open it." I stood up on the edge of the container. I raised my iron arm. The blue light in the wrist flared, bright as a beacon in the gloom. "Hey!" I shouted. "Golden boy. Up here." I activated the claws. Clack clack. I scraped them together, creating a shower of sparks. The wolf's head snapped up. It snarled, the saw blade spinning up. It opened its jaws wide to roar. "Now!" Rin fired. She didn't use burst fire. She used single, precision shots. Bam. Bam. The first bullet hit a tooth, shattering it. The second bullet went straight down the gullet into the spinning mechanism of the saws. Crunch, grind, the sound was horrific. The high-speed blades jammed on the depleted uranium slug. Gears stripped. Smoke poured from the wolf's mouth. The machine thrashed, clawing at its own face, trying to dislodge the jam. Jump. We leaped from the container, hitting the floor, rolling. We sprinted for the elevator. The wolf recovered faster than I expected. It shook its head, spitting out broken blades and black oil. It saw us. It charged. We hit the elevator doors. I jammed my iron fingers into the seam. Open. I roared, engaging the hydraulics. The heavy doors groaned and slid apart. We threw ourselves inside the cage. It was a massive industrial platform surrounded by mesh walls. I slammed my hand onto the control panel. The freight elevator didn't stop. It died. We were somewhere around the 80th floor, based on the air pressure popping in my ears, when the void charge I had injected into the motor finally burned out. The gears ground together with a sound like a dying whale, screaming metal against metal before seizing up completely. The platform shuddered violently, throwing us to the mesh floor. The red emergency strobe flickered once, twice, and then plunged us into absolute darkness. Gravity lurched. For a terrifying second, I thought the cable had snapped and we were about to plummet back down to the foundation. But the brakes held. Clangaserish. We were suspended in the throat of the spire, dangling by a steel thread in the pitch black. Rin, I whispered. The silence in the shaft was immense. It wasn't empty, it was pressurized. It felt like the air itself was waiting for us to make a mistake. I'm here, Rin's voice was tight. Checking the perimeter. A beam of white light cut through the dark. Rin had activated the tactical light on her rifle. The beam swept across the rusted mesh walls of the cage, illuminating the infinite vertical tunnel of concrete and cables outside. The motor is fused, I said, feeling the vibration through the floor plates. My arm, it's drained. I can't jumpstart it again without a recharge source. Then we walk, Rin said, shining the light upward. There's a service hatch in the ceiling of the cage. We climb the cable until we find a maintenance door. Climb the cable? I looked at my heavy iron arm. Rin, I weigh 200 pounds now. If I grab that cable, I might shear it. Then we find a door here. She swung the light toward the shaft wall facing us. We were parked slightly below a set of double doors. They were painted a dull industrial gray, stenciled with a faded number 084. Level 84. Habitation Sector G, the Hive. That's the worker district, I said, accessing the map stored in my admin memory. Low-level technicians. Maintenance crews. High-density population. High density means food, Rin said, her stomach growling audibly in the silence. And medical supplies. And maybe a terminal you can interface with. It also means high density of sleepwalkers, I countered. If the buffer failed here. If the buffer failed, they're dead. If it didn't, they're frozen. Either way, we need to get out of this shaft before the shepherd finds a way to climb up. She was right. The wolf was gone, but for how long? A machine that could learn would figure out how to navigate the shaft eventually. I stood up, the servos in my knee joints whining. I walked to the edge of the cage. The doors were 5 feet above the floor of the lift. I reached up with my iron hand. I jammed the claws into the seam of the shaft doors. Grind. I pulled. The doors were unpowered, heavy, and rusted shut. I engaged the hydraulics. My arm hummed with blue static. With a shriek of protest, the doors slid open. Stale air rushed into the shaft. It didn't smell like the ozone of the foundation or the rot of the garden. It smelled like old sweat, cabbage, and mold. A damp, earthy musk that belonged in a cellar, not a skyscraper. Boost me, Rin said. I laced my flesh hand with my iron fingers, forming a stirrup. She stepped into it and I launched her up. She scrambled onto the ledge of the 84th floor, rolling into a crouch with her rifle raised. Clear, she hissed. But, weird. I grabbed the ledge with my iron claw, pulling myself up with a grunt of exertion. I stood up and looked around. We weren't in a hallway. We were in a street. The hive wasn't built like an office building. It was an arcology, a city within a city. The corridor was 20 meters wide, lined with neon signs, now dead, and storefronts. Above us, the ceiling was painted a fake sky blue, now peeling and gray. Apartment modules were stacked on either side like shipping containers, rising up to a false ceiling 3 stories high. Laundry lines hung between balconies. Bicycles leaned against walls. It looked like a slice of the slums had been cut out and pasted into the sky. but it was frozen. Hundreds of people filled the street. A woman carrying a basket of synthetic fruit stood mid-stride. 2 children were frozen in the act of chasing a cybercat. A group of men in gray jumpsuits sat around a plastic table outside a noodle bar, chopsticks halfway to their mouths. They were vibrating. The sound was louder here than in the subway. It reverberated off the metal walls, creating a dissonant harmony that made my vision blur. "Don't touch them," Rin reminded me, moving carefully through the crowd of statues. I walked past a man reading a newspad. I looked at the screen. It was frozen on a headline from 3 days ago. Zenith Corp announces record profits. "Look at the walls," I said, pointing to the apartment modules. Rin shone her light. The walls weren't just dirty. They were infected. A web of black veins ran across the concrete surfaces. At first I thought it was cracks, but as we got closer I saw the texture. It was fungus. Black, hairy mold that grew in fractal patterns. It pulsed slowly in time with the vibration of the sleepwalkers. The null fluid, I realized. It mutated. In the garden it was liquid. In the foundation it was tar. Here, in the biological density of the hive, it's become a spore. "Spores mean airborne," Rin said, immediately pulling her gas mask up from her neck and sealing it over her face. She tossed me a spare filtration unit she had scavenged. "Put it on. If that stuff gets in your lungs, you'll be coughing up black ink in an hour." I strapped the mask on. The world narrowed to the view through dirty plastic lenses. The sound of my own breathing became loud and rasping. We moved deeper into the hive. We needed to find a stairwell or a secondary elevator to keep going up. As we walked, the environment became more hostile. The black mold grew thicker. It wasn't just on the walls anymore. It was draping from the laundry lines like Spanish moss. It was carpeting the floor. And it was growing on the people. I stopped in front of an old man sitting on a bench. The mold hadn't just covered him. It was integrating him. Fine black tendrils had bored into his skin, weaving through his pores. His eyes were open but the whites were gone, replaced by a fuzzy black growth. But he was still vibrating. Still alive in the buffer. "Vex used to say that the null code rewrites matter based on the environment," I muttered, my voice muffled by the mask. "In the garden, it created gold because that's what the rich valued. Here, in the hive, where people are packed together like cells, it's turning them into a single organism," Rin finished, aiming her light down a side alley. "Kaelen, look." I looked. The alleyway was blocked. Not by debris. By a wall of flesh. It looked like a dozen sleepwalkers had been pushed together and fused by the mold. Their bodies had melted into a slurry of limbs and faces, forming a biological barricade. But they weren't random. Their arms were linked, forming a lattice. Their legs were fused into the pavement. And their heads. Their heads were arranged in a circle in the center of the wall. 12 faces, eyes closed, mouths open. They were breathing in unison. "Itching it. Itching it." "It's a filter," I said, suppressing the urge to vomit. "The hive? It's turning the people into the building's immune system. They're filtering the air. Processing the spores." "We can't go that way," Rin said, backing away. "We have to go up," I said. "The stairwell access is behind that blockade." "I'm not cutting through people, Kaelen." "They aren't people anymore, Rin. They're bricks." I stepped forward, revving the hydraulics in my arm. The blue light flared, illuminating the wall of faces. When the blue light hit them, the faces woke up. 12 pairs of mold-covered eyes snapped open. 12 mouths twisted in a synchronized grimace. "Unauthorized. Admin." The voice came from all 12 throats at once. It was a wet, gurgling chorus. The rejects the signal." The wall moved. It didn't just stand there. It bulged. Arms, dozens of them, reached out from the mass of flesh. They weren't just human arms anymore. The bones had lengthened, sharpened into spikes. The fingers were fused into clubs. "Back!" Rin shouted, firing. The kinetic rounds hit the flesh wall. Thwack thwack. It didn't bleed. It absorbed the bullets. The flesh rippled, closing over the wounds instantly. The wall of flesh surged forward, detaching itself from the alley sides. It was a rolling wave of meat and mold, inching toward us like a slow glacier. "It's blocking the path," I said. "And it's indestructible to ballistics." "Fire?" Rin asked. "Mold hates fire. We don't have a flamethrower. And if we burn this, the smoke in this enclosed space will kill us." I looked at the environment. The neon signs. The power conduits running along the ceiling. "Electricity," I said. "The mold? It's a conductive network. That's how the hive mind communicates. So we overload it. I pointed to a transformer box mounted on the wall above the noodle shop. It was sparking, damaged but active. Rin, shoot the coupling on that transformer. Drop the cable. On the wet floor? Do it. Rin aimed. She fired a single shot. Bing. The coupling shattered. A thick, high-voltage cable whipped down from the ceiling, sparking violently. It landed in a puddle of black sludge right in front of the advancing flesh wall. The sludge was conductive. Zzzzzztt. Blue lightning arced from the cable, racing through the puddle, and slammed into the wall of flesh. The effect was horrific. The 12 faces screamed, not in anger but in pure electrical agony. The mold caught fire, burning with a chemical green flame. The muscles of the fused bodies spasmed uncontrollably, tearing themselves apart. Crack snapaskiosi. The wall disintegrated. It fell apart into heaps of twitching, smoking meat. The path was clear. Jesus, Rin whispered, lowering her rifle. Come on, I said, stepping over the smoking remains. I tried not to look at the faces. One of them looked like the woman with the fruit basket I had seen earlier. We reached the heavy fire door marked stairwell access. I grabbed the handle. Lock. I punched the lock mechanism. Crunch. The door swung open. We stepped into the stairwell. It was a vertical concrete shaft spiraling up and down. But it wasn't empty. I shone my admin light up the center of the spiral. The stairwell was full of webs. Thick, translucent strands of solidified null fluid stretched across the gap, connecting the railings. And hanging in the webs, like flies wrapped in silk, were the Centurions. Dozens of Zenith security droids. They had been caught, wrapped, and deactivated. Something lives here, Rin whispered, shining her light on a droid that had been torn in half. Something that eats robots. I looked closer at the webbing. It wasn't sticky. It was sharp. It was made of monofilament wire, spun from the void matter. Not a spider, I said, looking at the claw marks on the concrete walls. Something with blades. Scritch, scratch. A sound from above. Far up, on the landing of the 90th floor, a shadow moved. It was humanoid but elongated. Its limbs had too many joints. It was climbing down the wall, upside down, moving with a silent, fluid grace. It stopped. It turned its head, a smooth, eyeless dome of white ceramic, toward us. It clicked. A sound like a Geiger counter. The Weaver. Another one of the things that fell from the tower. Don't move, I whispered. It detects vibration on the web. We stood frozen on the landing of the 84th floor. The Weaver hung above us, twitching. We have to go up, Rin breathed. That's the only way. We can't fight that on the stairs, I said. It has the high ground. And it has the web. I looked at the elevator shaft door next to the stairs. We go back to the shaft, I said. The elevator is dead, Kaelen. I know, I said, looking at my iron claws. But I'm not. I looked at Rin. How good are you at climbing? Better than being eaten by a spider, she said. We backed out of the stairwell, closing the door gently. We went back to the open elevator shaft. The empty black throat. I looked at the steel cables running up into the darkness. They were thick, greasy, and cold. I'll go first, I said. I'll cut handholds into the concrete if I have to. You follow. I jumped, grabbing the cable with my iron hand. The clamp locked on. Clank. I began to climb. One-armed. Hauling my body weight in the weight of the iron limb. Rin followed, climbing the service ladder on the wall. Below us, the hive hummed, a city of sleeping, moldy ghosts. Above us, the Weaver clicked in the darkness, waiting for a fly to touch its web. And somewhere, 120 floors up, the eye was waiting for the sun to set. The cable was a lifeline covered in 20 years of congealed grease. I hung by my iron hand 200 meters above the hive, swaying gently in the draft of the shaft. The wine down here wasn't fresh. It was a recycled exhale from the lungs of the building, smelling of hydraulic fluid and distant, rotting meat. Clank. Grip. I established a rhythm. Reach up with the iron claw. Clamp onto the thick steel braid. Engage the hydraulic piston in my forearm. Pull. My body rose 3 feet. Reach. Clamp. Pull. It was grueling. My human shoulder, the left one, screamed in protest as it dangled uselessly. My legs scrabbled for purchase on the smooth concrete walls of the shaft, finding only slick patches of oil and moss. I was a flea climbing the throat of a dead god. Below me, 20 feet down, Rin was climbing the service ladder. She was faster than me, agile and organic, but the ladder ended 30 floors up. Soon she would have to transition to the cable. Status, I gritted out, watching a drop of black oil run down my iron wrist. Ladder integrity is failing. Rin's voice was breathless, echoing in the vast acoustic chamber of the shaft. Bolts are rusted through. Don't look down, Scraper. I'm not looking down, I lied. I looked down. The hive was a distant square of dim light below us. The street where we had fought the flesh wall was just a glowing slit now. And further down, the foundation was a black void. But in the darkness between us and the hive, I saw movement. It was subtle. A shadow detaching itself from the wall. A flicker of pale white ceramic against the dark concrete. Click, click, click. The sound drifted up. It sounded like a Geiger counter ticking near a radioactive source. It's following, I whispered. The Weaver. I see it, Rin said. It's on the wall. It's fast. The creature wasn't climbing like us. It was flowing. Its multi-jointed limbs moved with a sickening, fluid grace, finding handholds that didn't exist. It climbed upside down, its head swiveling 180 degrees to watch us with its smooth, eyeless face. It wasn't rushing. It was stalking. It's waiting for us to get tired, I said. Or it's hurting us. I looked up. The shaft stretched endlessly into the gloom. But about 50 meters above, I saw a change in the architecture. The concrete walls gave way to brushed steel panels. A ring of service lights flickered. White, clinical LEDs instead of the yellow industrial bulbs of the lower levels. Level 120. Research and Development. There, I pointed with my chin. The maintenance hatch. 50 meters. We'll never make it, Rin said. It's closing the gap. The Weaver accelerated. It skittered up the wall, closing the distance to Rin in seconds. It stopped parallel to her, 10 feet away on the opposite wall. It didn't attack. It opened its chest. The white ceramic plates of its torso slid apart like a ribcage opening. Inside there wasn't a heart. There was a spinneret, a glowing blue organ pulsing with void energy. Thwip. It fired. A strand of translucent, monofilament wire shot across the shaft. It missed Rin by an inch, embedding itself in the ladder rung above her hand. The wire tightened. It hummed. Thwip. Thwip. 2 more strands. One crossed in front of her. One behind. It's not shooting at me, Rin realized, freezing on the ladder. It's building a web. It's boxing me in. The Weaver moved higher, spinning its trap. It was creating a lattice of razor wire across the shaft, cutting off our ascent. If we climbed through it, we would be diced. Kaelen. Rin shouted. I'm pinned. I looked down. Rin was trapped between the ladder and a web of shining blue thread. The Weaver crouched above her, ready to drop. I looked at the hatch above. Freedom. I looked at my iron arm. The Alara chip in my wrist was pulsing. Let her fall, the primitive OS of the arm suggested. Optimize. Survival. Shut up, I snarled at my own limb. I couldn't shoot. My pistol was in my belt and I needed my hand to hold the cable. I had to change the geometry of the fight. Rin, I yelled. Do you trust me? No, she screamed back, eyeing the Weaver. Good. Trust physics. I loosened my grip on the cable. Not enough to let go, but enough to slide. I slid down. Friction sparked from my iron palm. The screech of metal on metal was deafening. I dropped 20 feet in a second, slamming to a halt just above the web. The Weaver looked up at me. Its eyeless face tilted. It hadn't expected the fly to come back down. I hung by one arm, swinging my body to build momentum. Hey, spider face. I activated the hydraulic punch. The piston in my forearm hissed, priming the explosive force. I swung toward the wall where the Weaver was perched. I didn't aim for the monster. I aimed for the wall next to it. Crack boom. My iron fist slammed into the concrete. The force was enough to shatter a tank. The wall exploded. Chunks of concrete the size of cinder blocks blasted outward. The Weaver lost its footing. The wall it was clinging to disintegrated. It shrieked, a high-pitched digital squeal, and fell. It tumbled backward into the shaft. But it didn't fall far. A safety line, a thread of silk attached to its abdomen, snapped taut. It swung in a wide arc, dangling in the center of the shaft. It recovered instantly. It flipped in midair, landing on the main elevator cable, the one I was holding. It was below me, gripping the same wire. It looked up. Click, click. It started to climb the cable. Toward me. Climb. I shouted to Rin. The web is broken. Rin scrambled up the ladder, bypassing the shattered section of the wall. The Weaver was fast on the cable. Its multiple limbs wrapped around the wire, propelling it upward like a shuttle. I tried to climb, but I was too slow. It would catch me before I reached the hatch. I looked at the door. I looked at my arm. Physics is a suggestion, I muttered. I backed up 3 steps. Rin, when I hit it, you push. I charged. I rammed my iron shoulder into the door, activating the hydraulic piston at the moment of impact. Boom. The metal groaned. The maglock held, but the frame buckled. Push. We both slammed our weight against the door. Crack. The door gave way. We fell inside. We scrambled into the darkness of the room, kicking the door shut behind us. I jammed a chair under the handle. We huddled against the back wall under a heavy metal desk. Don't look, Rin whispered, curling into a ball. Don't look at the light. Through the crack in the door, I saw the hallway turn red. 2000 hours. The blink. A sound like a trumpet made of static blasted through the building. It vibrated in my bones. It felt like every molecule in my body was trying to vibrate apart. The red light washed past the door. I heard the glass walls of the hallway shatter. Not break, unmake. The sound of matter dissolving into data. Then silence. The red light faded. The static trumpet stopped. We sat there in the dark, breathing in the smell of old paper and dust. It's over, Rin whispered, checking her watch. The eye is closed. Until dawn. I relaxed, letting my head hit the wall. And then I looked around the room we had broken into. It wasn't a server room. It was an office. An old-fashioned, wood-paneled office. Bookshelves. A mahogany desk. And on the wall, a painting. A portrait of a man. He looked familiar. White suit. Glasses. Omega. But the nameplate under the painting didn't say Omega. It said, Founder, Arthur Zenith. I stared at the painting. Rin, I said, my voice cold. What? Omega didn't go underground, I said. He changed his name. Zenith Corp? It is the Omega Consortium. They didn't steal the tech. They inherited it. I looked at the desk. There was a computer terminal. But connected to the Spire's intranet. And next to it a picture frame. A photo of Arthur Zenith holding the hand of a little girl in a hospital gown. Alara. We're not in a random office, I said. We're in the headmaster's study. We're in the belly of the beast, Rin. I stood up and walked to the terminal. I placed my flesh hand on the screen. And I think I just found the password.